And welcome back for the newest edition of the Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am your host, Colby Conway, at Colby R. Conway on Twitter. And with me here, yet again, Matt Selz, at the Selzman on Twitter. So, Matt, I know we've been talking a lot here as the hot stove is picked back up a little bit in a couple of days. I had a couple of days where you and I weren't updating the MLB free agent tracker, and now we've had a couple signings in the last couple of days. So I know we've been talking, but I got to ask you, how's everything been?
Not too bad. It's nice to be playing or talking baseball with you on a day in which it's currently sleeting and or going to start snowing, hopefully, eventually, here in Lincoln. I don't know. They were calling for 4 inches of snow, and I don't think there's any shot we get it. So, it warms my heart to talk baseball, especially on a day where it's sleeting nonstop outside.
Yep. If it makes you feel any better, because I know it's not, but I got to tell you anyway, it's 70 and sunny here in North Carolina.
Yeah, I know.
Not that it makes you feel any better, but hey,
I mean, it was 50 here on Sunday, and I grilled pizza on the, for the kids for dinner, because it was 50 in January, and I knew this was coming. That's why I did that on Sunday, because you got to take your nice days when you can get them in the winter in Nebraska.
I'll give you credits, because if anybody's not following you on Twitter, at the Salesman on Twitter, I'll throw that out there once again. You have a very diversified Twitter portfolio in that you can talk about NASCAR, you got baseball, you'll chime in on football, obviously, and then you have all of your cooking expeditions, as I like to say, because it's all this sick stuff that looks good, tastes good. It's all stuff that is way, way, way out of my league in terms of cooking. And if you follow me on Twitter, all you get is talking about crappy sports teams. So I'm very limited in my Twitter portfolio.
Well, my cooking keeps me away from talking about how terrible the Jets' second half of the season was for football. And, you also got a K-State men's basketball tweet last night because my alma mater knocked off KU. So pretty stoked about that one. And
then I got the Texans and Pirates. I don't know. I mean, I know where I stand with that. I'm really looking forward to about the end of April for draft season. That's pretty much where my head is at now. So, yeah, things have definitely been interesting, but I'm glad to say at least that we have been getting some baseball news. We talked about it a little bit, but if you haven't checked out on fantasyalarm.com, Matt and I are diving pretty deep into a lot of free agent signings. It started off with, we're going to do, some of like the bigger name guys and go from there. Next thing you know, it's now turned into, if you sign a major league contract, you're almost getting written up in the tracker. That's just what it's come down to at this point.
I mean, you and I love baseball so much that we can't help ourselves, right?
I know it's all in there. Like we're already updated today. I'm not sure if you caught it yet, Matt, but I went ahead and put in the Brian Anderson and Tommy Pham signings, as well as Adam Duvall, I should say, heading to Boston. So all of that's updated in the tracker. That is up to date. Check it out. Matt and I putting our analysis and what we believe the impact of different signings to be. It's all there. But Matt, as the prospect and kind of the young guy here in terms of like the fantasy analyzing some of these rookies and stuff, little news came out that Jordan Walker, St. Louis's, I believe he's their top prospect overall, is going to get a chance to break camp with the team. We talked about it a little bit beforehand with jumping on here. So Jordan Walker, incredibly talented prospect. Everybody knows that he's got, I put in if you remember from last year on Fantasy Alarm site, when you click on a player for like their profile, there's going to be a write up there. So we call them like capsules, essentially. We're writing those. I ended up writing one on Jordan Walker once this news kind of came out. So Matt, I want to ask you about Jordan Walker, his chances of breaking camp with the team, but then I also want you to chime in on this. So over on Fangraphs, I believe it's Jeff Zimmerman, if I have that correct. Yes, he does a Mining the News segment and talked about the team kind of talking about Jordan Walker a little bit. And the quotes about him are insane, what they are talking about, calling him almost like a can't miss prospect. Another quote from, I believe it's John Mozeliak of the Cardinals. Do I have that correct?
Is it I John? Believe so, yeah. He's the GM.
So. Yeah.
Or president of baseball operations.
Yes. So he basically said, mentally mature beyond his years, can't miss prospect, and said, quote, when you talk about combining the physical impression with the performance impression, it's an exciting combination to have, Mozeliak said. You never want to put ceilings on players, and we certainly won't do that here, but it's easy to dream with the kind of potential that this young man has. So To me, it sounds like he's got a pretty darn good opportunity to break camp with the team, but that could be me reading in between the tea leaves.
I think as long as he doesn't get hurt, he's going to be on the opening day roster. There was a lot of us that were expecting him to come up at the end of last year because we felt, even though it was AA, that he had basically nothing left to prove. He's 20 still. He'll turn 21 in May of this year. So in his age 20 season at AA, he played 119 games. That's not a small sample size at AA, which, by the way, is considered the upper minors. Slash 306, 388, 510 with 19 homers, 100 runs, 68 RBI, and 22 steals. And, you know, a very nice walk rate, double-digit walk rate. Just over 21% K rate, which is acceptable. That's perfectly fine if you're going to have that slash line. So, yeah, there's not really anything left for him to prove there. He also got some time in the outfield, too, not a lot. He played most of his games at third base, with 70 of them coming at third base. He played 25 games in right field and 18 games at DH. So they kind of, in a smattering in center and left. But basically, he's a third baseman or a right fielder, at this point. Because, hey, when you have Nolan Arenado at third base, you got to start moving dudes off of third base if you're ever going to get him to the majors. So, yeah. And then how about this, Colby, for his size? He's 6'5", 220.
Yep, like I said in the profile that I wrote about him, that'll be on his player page. I said Walker seems to be the type of prospect that you build in a lab.
Yep, he's got, I would put it at 55 grade hit tool, which is above average, which puts him about, if you're figuring that an average batting average right now is about 270, 55 puts him in the 280, 290 range.
Where's that raw power grade?
I put him at about a 75, probably.
Okay, that checks out.
He's got pretty impressive raw power. Now raw power, I would put it 75. If I'm talking game power, I might put it down about 65, right? Because there's a difference between if you watch this guy hit in a batting cage, and can he bring it to bear in a game? Yes, clearly. Are we going to see him with as much power as, say, an Aaron Judge or Pete Alonso? Probably not quite to that level. Does he have a 40 home run? Does he have a 35 to 40 home run season in him? Yeah, easily. I'm not concerned about that. He's not really going to steal your bags in the majors. I don't think his speed is a tad below average. So you might get some, but I wouldn't expect this guy to be a 20-20 or a 30-20 producer. And as for where he fits, you and I were trying to figure this out before we started recording, because this is the tricky part, right? You're not going to move Nolan Arenado off third base. We already know that. You're not moving Paul Goldschmidt off of first base, so the corners are taken. You're not going to put a 6'5", 220-pounder anywhere else in the infield, because that's just too big for either second or short, obviously. So that means the outfield. Well, right field is taken by Lars Nootbaar, who's one of the better defensive outfielders at that spot, and everybody's fantasy darling this year. So I think Nootbaar is safe. I think if you're going to put him in the field, I think you probably have O'Neill and Carlson split center field, and you put Jordan Walker in left. The other option is you just have him get used to Major League pitching, and you put him in the DH spot, and you have Juan Yepes play whenever Walker needs a spell.
I think that is probably what occurs in that quote from the Mining the News that I'm seeing here on Fangraphs from Jeff Zimmerman. It does say every shot at winning the opening day job in right field. So if they are going to leave him in right, that either means Nootbaar is going to DH
center,
or he moves to center or left. Because here's the thing, Tyler O'Neill there's so many things to look at with this Cardinals team. First off, this lineup is going to be damn good regardless of who's in there. Like
It's
this
very
lineup is deep. Is
and
yes,
circular.
yes, it's very, very impressive. But when you look at it, O'Neal, there's been reports this offseason that he's been trying to, I hate this term, but bulk down a little bit and helps him be more durable. If you're worried about his durability, I don't think you want to put him in center. You probably don't want him covering as much, the ground like that. So you could move Newt Bar to center, and then you can leave Tyler O'Neill in left, or O'Neill and Carlson maybe split in center. I think what's going to happen, it almost seems like in most of these scenarios, Yepes/Gorman, whoever you believe is going to DH for them, or Carlson is potentially taking the biggest hit, because if Tyler O'Neill's healthy, he's playing. Like, there's so much fantasy goodness with him and reality goodness with that bat of his. He's playing. And I wrote about in the capsule, if Walker breaks camp with the team, he is not up there to ride Pine. That is just not happening. If he's up there, he's playing damn near every day.
Yeah, we're not seeing an Andrew Vaughn situation here.
Or at the very least, we better not.
I don't think we will. I think the Cardinals. This is precisely why the Cardinals did not make a move for Juan Soto. Is because they want Jordan Walker up and filling a spot and coming at a cheaper cost with more control. So yeah, it's a very tantalizing piece of news. And if you have Walker in keeper leagues, well, congratulations. You just got a roster spot filled for before the draft day for a very cheap price.
Yep. I ultimately, I think you're right. He's the thing is going to be like right now, if you look over at NFBC data, I believe right now he's going just within the top like 280 or so picks since December 1st. Once spring training comes around, he hits that first mammoth home run that circulates Twitter. That ADP is going up. We all know it.
He's at
283. 283 since December 1st.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah. So, but that's going to move up on the first moonshot that circulates around Twitter. God forbid they announce early enough that he's a starting spot. I mean,
he's already going ahead of Juan Yepes and Dylan Carlson and Nolan Gorman.
How much higher can his ADP get, you think? Like, here's the thing. You have him graded out at these numbers. It might take a little bit for him to reach his absolute ceiling. Not everybody, not even the top.
He's not going to come up and be, and he's not going to come up and be a Julio Rodriguez from last year.
Correct. There's going to be a little bit of maturation, but I mean, how high are we going to see him go? His min pick already is 171. And this is recent that it said he's going to get a chance to break camp with the team. So whoever said that minimum pick knew something that we didn't, or maybe is the biggest Jordan Walker fan in the world.
I have him as my 5th overall prospect right now in my top 400.
Yeah. I mean, where can that ADP get? I mean, do we see him go in the top 150? That was going to be my line.
Like if we're talking about the week before the season starts, and he's locked down, let's say they come out and say he's played well enough that he's going to be the starting right fielder.
Yeah.
What?
I mean, how do you not, right?
How do you not? Like, he's literally had a bullseye on his back for, it feels like 2 years as a prospect.
Yeah.
Like, people started salivate. Like, he's only been in the minors since 2021, right? He started, he got drafted as the 21st overall pick in the June 2020 draft. Obviously, there was no minor league season in 2020, so he did some, instructional work and stuff like that, right? And then he hit the ground running in 2021 and played a grand total of 82 games in 2021 in the minors across A and high A, and hit like well over 300, hit 14 total bombs, 14 steals. Like, it was an impressive debut, and now he's at AA. And basically doubled down on his performance.
Yep.
So
we'll have to see how it plays out with Walker in St. Louis. I mean, at the very least, I'm glad they're at least giving him a chance, because there is so much fantasy goodness to be had there, to say the
least.
least.
I'm just curious, what are the outfielders going like around 150 right now?
So I was looking at that from December 1st.
Bonds, you got Hunter Renfroe, Stanton's at basically 150, Ian Happ is at 153.
And then Jordan Montgomery's best friend, Harrison Bader.
And then Haniger, Nimmo, Oscar. Like, you can't tell me you wouldn't take a shot on Jordan Walker over anybody after Stanton, right?
Of those guys, yeah.
Happ, Bader, Haniger, Nimmo, Oscar Gonzalez, Bellinger, Lars Nootbaar is going at 191.
Yeah, that won't last long. Because Nootbaar's
Joey Meneses, for God's sakes, is going 195.
Yeah. Walker's going up. We're going to see him in the top 150. I'll say it.
I mean,
if he breaks camp with a starting role, that is. That's my assumption, or that's my caveat to the whole operation.
Yes.
Yeah. So, unfortunately,
could he beat your favorite guy in Byron Buxton? Buxton's going 110.
Can you not put me in that situation? But yeah, don't slander Buxton's name like that. We'll see how it all shakes out.
Slanders himself.
Let me ask you this. Just more mine in the news here. I see with all these signings that the Cubs have done at first base / corner outfield, mainly Hosmer, and then bringing in Mancini in the mix, also occupying DH. Matt Mervis is going to start the year in the minors. Scale of 1 to 10, where is your heartbrokenness, if that's a word? Because I was excited for Mervis coming into the year. I still am, but this kind of puts a little cold water on the flame.
For sure. Look, you're looking at your prototypical corner infielder, right? He's going to hit for pretty solid numbers, pretty solid batting average. He's got pretty decent pop. He'll be a run producer, and then basically nothing in the steals category, which is fine. Don't need that from first baseman. Okay. But I will say the talent plays. Okay. Mm-hmm. If he shows up and he's doing what he did at AAA last year, which was in 57 games, Matt Mervis / 297, 383, 593 with 15 homers, 41 runs, 39 RBI. Okay, and a 14.6% K rate and a 10.4% walk rate. Okay, he does that again, they will make room for him on that roster.
Yep, and I'm excited for Mervis again.
There's no reason to think that either Christopher Morel or Hosmer or Mancini is going to hold him down, or Wisdom for that matter, or Zach McKinstry.
Yep.
Right.
Lot to like with Mervis.
There are impediments now to Mervis, which
correct
does sting. But it's not like they went out and signed a combination of, Matt Olson and Nolan Arenado to hold down. This is not a Cardinals corner infield.
Correct.
Right. Like Hosmer has been so bad he has 3 different teams paying his salary that he doesn't play for.
Yeah.
Right. It's like the old Moneyball line with David Justice. No, the Yankees think nothing of you that they're willing to pay you to play against them, right? Like Eric Hosmer is just done at this point. Mancini, I think, will be fine at DH. Morel was so hit and miss last year, I don't know what to make of him. Same with Patrick Wisdom, who I'm pretty sure at one point some of these guys wind up going back down to the minors for like a reset. I know the guy everybody thought was going to hold down the first base spot last year did not do that. So we'll see. But again, talent plays. So if he shows his talent in the minors, he'll come back up and he'll force his way onto that roster. And
you and I talked about it a little bit in just different circles. But when Mervis comes up, it's a when. It's not an if. It's not, when he comes up, it's not an if. It's a when. He's coming up at some point. His power will play, and we've talked about it. That Chicago offense, they're going to be a lot of strikeouts, but they do have some potential to put up some runs. Like that offense, I was doing
sneaky intriguing.
Yeah, when you go to MLB free agent tracker and sort the column by teams, I mean, Chicago hitter, Chicago hitter, Chicago hitter, Chicago hitter, Chicago. Boom! They've revamped that whole lineup, which is good because it needed a drastic overhaul.
Yeah.
Outside of Seiya Suzuki.
And by the way, the handedness of Mervis plays into him too because he's a lefty, right? So you've got Hosmer's a lefty. You've got, so if Hosmer struggles, you call Matt Mervis up, put him at first base. It's not like you could put him in the same exact spot in the lineup and your righty lefties, rotation doesn't get screwed up either.
And it might not even be if Hosmer struggles. It just might be they come to the realization that like Hosmer's just boring. And they're sick of just seeing ground balls every other time.
I mean, it's also entirely possible that they really like Matt Mervis and they don't want to start the clock on him just yet.
Very true.
And they're just getting a cheap, old, busted Hosmer.
And not on their dime.
And not on their dime at all, because Boston is sort of paying him, but it's really San Diego. They're still paying him to not be anywhere close to San Diego. And you could see, it's the old Chris Bryant. He needs to work on his defense thing. And in like 19 days when the clock, like
April, whatever date that ends up being.
Although they changed it now, right? It's not a service time thing. It's like if he doesn't win AL or NL Rookie of the Year, But it's possible that they're just baiting their time with Hosmer, and then they're going to call Mervis up.
For sure. And they'll be sick of seeing ground balls 53% of the time anyway.
I mean, he's gonna kill so many rallies in the middle of that between Seiya Suzuki and Mancini with ground into double plays.
Oh, they're just gonna be like, we just want somebody here who lost the ball maybe just every now and again, and that'd be fine.
That's like the top half of this lineup is gonna be shanking the bottom half of this lineup at times, right? Because like Horner and Swanson and Happ and Suzuki are going to work their way on, and then you're going to come to ground ball double play from Hosmer, and then Mancini will get on base, and then Bellinger won't be able to find the batter's box because he'll be, whatever planet Belly's on most of the time. And then Morel will be, I don't know, maybe it'll leave the park, maybe it won't, I don't know. And then it's either going to be Tucker Barnhart or Jan Gomes, old legs trying to make it around the bases. So
this offense is going to be fun, though. You heard it here first.
I mean, I know we just said it's going to be sneaky intriguing, and then I just crapped all over half of it. But, like, if Belly can fix the swing, then that's an intriguing piece, right? And if you put Mervis in instead of Hosmer, then you're talking you've got a pretty good top 7 there in a wide-open division.
Yep, to say the least. So, Matt, behind the scenes here, we're starting to get ready for the MLB draft guide. We're getting ready. Content starting to, trickle in a little bit. We're putting stuff together. Of course, you've gotten a sneak peek of it a little bit. I don't know if we're counting the free agent tracker in the draft guide, but that's there. Check out everything that's happening there. Even if it's not, there's a lot of good information there that you need to know. But in the draft guide, of course, you're going to have all your stuff. We're going to hit all the fantasy trigger words, sleepers, busts, the top rookies. Matt and I are currently working through those now. And we kind of had an idea here. I put in our note sheet here, not that y'all can see this by any means, but laying the groundwork. So we all know the terms, right? We all know sleeper. We all know bust. We all know breakout candidate. But have we thought to not necessarily truly define it, but explain what it means? So, for example, in the draft guide, I'm going to have my top 10 busts for the 2023 fantasy baseball season. They are going to be in there. I have one player right now at the top of my mind whose ADP is within the top like 25 to 30 picks. Those guys that bust, I am not saying that this particular person, who's an Atlanta outfielder, by the way, is going to hit 150 with 3 home runs and get demoted to the minors. That's not the bust. To me, Matt, when I hear bust, I think of substantially underperform like expectations or projections, and in other terms too, not live up to their draft capital by a substantial margin. If I say this Atlanta outfielder is going to bust, if they return 32nd overall player value and they were 28th drafted, so be it. but I'm expecting them to be a little bit farther down. So to me, when I'm thinking bust, I'm saying based on where they are drafted, you are not getting this value back. To me, that is a bust. I am not saying that they are going to tank, hit below the Mendoza line, and they're out of the league by the end of the year. That's not a bust. That is just insane to think that could happen with a player being drafted that early.
Right. Yeah, I'm on the same page with you. When we say bust, and look, we're not saying, oh, this guy got injured, so clearly he was a bust. Injuries don't count in this. We're talking about, he played a full season or close to it, as much of a full season as you expect, and just did not produce what you had drafted him to do, or really anywhere close to it, right? We're not talking, trying to think of an example from last year. That's a good.
Think about it. Okay, what about the Chicago starters? I don't remember exactly where they were going, but Lance and Giolito, I believe it was Lance more so, but they significantly underperformed.
Yeah. That's a great. Yeah, they were being drafted as probably SP2s, and they were at best SP5s.
At best.
Like, that's what we're talking about, right? The difference between the value you drafted them for and what they returned makes them a bust. It does not mean that they are going, like, that their career is going to end this year, right?
Yeah.
You pointed out, I believe it's Michael Harris you're talking about.
It sure is.
Which, coincidentally enough, I'm writing up his player capsule right now, which is a very interesting one to think about, because he only spent less than 200 games in the minor leagues before coming up to the majors, and then won Rookie of the Year and earned himself one of those famed 6-year contract deals. In fact, Vaughn Grissom's got to be better, because he's the only rookie that came up for Atlanta last year that did not get signed to a long-term deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, his benefit is he chased Dansby Swanson out of town, but he didn't. Like, Spencer Strider got signed to a long-term deal. Michael Harris got a long-term deal. So I'm with you on that terminology for bust. But I guess my question is, what do you consider, like, how many rounds, or however you want to put, like, how big of a drop-off in return do you need for a guy to be a bust? Like, if you draft a guy in the second round and they return 5th round value, is that a bust to you?
See, I think, again, this is a good practice, and kind of why we're doing it and talking about it, because, I don't know if it's necessarily apples to oranges. Like, if I'm taking somebody in the 1st or 2nd round and they only return 5th or 6th round value, we'll say 5th to make it easy for the math terms. If I draft a player in the 2nd round, they give me 5th round value. That 3-round difference is more impactful than my 8th round pick help performing for my team as an 11th rounder. Like, there's a different level there. So I think earlier on, the margin for error is smaller. Maybe three-ish rounds, I think, is going to be like a safe-ish number to go with. And again, like you said, like I said, Michael Harris is going to be one of my top bust guys. If he goes out week 1 and has a freak injury, I'm not victory lapping that.
Well, right. Like, and anybody that victory laps injuries is just not the kind of people you want to be associated with, to be perfectly honest.
You can't do that. And then I'll come back to this quick. Another good example from last year was Sal Perez, coming off the 40-plus home run season, being the first catcher off the board by an insane number. Like, that was set to fail.
He and Rio Muto were not even close, and Rio Muto was
set to fail. So that's a good example for that. But I mean, earlier on, I say in the first 2, 3, 4 rounds, because those are your cornerstone players essentially, and if they're not performing as top round guys, I think that's where you're in for a world of hurt. Look back at Lynn and Giolito. You drafted them as maybe back end SP1s or solid SP2s. For them to give you SP5, even SP4, if you even want to give them there, that was incredibly detrimental to your team. Your pitching was screwed from the start. Like, you couldn't come back from that. So I say earlier on, maybe 2 or 3, maybe 3 or 3-ish rounds of value. And I think later on, for somebody to bust, like for your 10th rounder to bust, it's got to be pretty darn bad.
Right. Okay. So I'm looking at third base right now.
Yeah.
On NFBC ADP from December 1st of 2022 to today. Okay. And we've got Devers is the 4th third baseman off the board right now at 20.66. So basically second round in a 12-team league, right? And then if we go down to Nolan Arenado, he's 6th off the board at 38th. So that's, you got 18 picks there between those two. So it's about a round and a half, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to Bregman, who is 7th off the board at 77 spot, like 77th off the board. So it's basically 40 spots between Arenado and Bregman.
Yeah.
Then you've got Gunnar Henderson at 91 and a half. After that, it's now Max Muncy at 145. So what you're saying is that if Devers performs, like you take Devers at 20th, right? But he performs like Arenado, who went off at 38th, right? That's a couple rounds. That's okay.
That's okay.
But if Arenado goes off the board at 38th and performs like Bregman going off the board at 77, that would be a bust. Because now you're talking 3.5 rounds.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I mean, you're talking 38 to 77, basically 40 picks. That's 4 rounds in a 10-team.
Yeah, you're talking Arenado might be sneaking into the late 3rd, certainly an early 4th, and 77 puts him, 7th round? Beginning of the 7th round?
So like that's where it's that. I mean, that's a tough thing too. Like, do we look at it and say, well, I'm drafting Jose Ramirez at 2nd overall. If he performs as 20th, that's a major bust. I mean, even if he's the 20th player, it's still pretty solid for your team, just maybe not 2nd overall. So like in terms of the gap of production, I think that's honestly going to vary by rounds. But I think if you're going to put a rough label to it, I mean, you could even look at it at tiers. So if we want to look at third base, let's just to make it super simple, let's put Ramirez in his own tier.
Right.
And let's say Witt and Machado are in a tier, and then Devers and Riley are in a tier. Arenado's in a tier of his own. Then it drops to Bregman.
By the way, why is Austin Riley going off the board after Devers?
Well, that's a good draft value that you should probably keep quiet so we can keep getting it. Because I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it. So let's keep doing it, people. Keep taking Devers first. Let us get Riley, or maybe if you're listening, you should be pushing Riley up above Devers. Maybe that's how I should be wording it.
I mean, you should be targeting Riley over Devers.
For sure.
That's not even like you asked me for a bust. To me, Devers this year is a bust.
Devers is I'm taking a little closer look at him because it ultimately is going to come down to which version from last year of Devers do you believe in. And again, I think both are a bit extreme, but let's dive into Devers on maybe the next episode. Curious.
I think it has more to do with the lineup around him than what he's actually capable of.
That is an issue. That's an issue too, but we'll get into that.
The lineup around him is not anywhere close to what it was. Even though the lineup last year was not great, it was still better than what they've just put together. I mean, the last 4 spots in this lineup are Casas, Duvall, Reese McGuire, who's better at taking his pants off than hitting a baseball, and Christian Arroyo.
Yeah, that lineup has some concerns.
And Masataka Yoshida, we're not sure what we're getting, right? Like he was great in Japan, but so was Seiya Suzuki, and that guy had a rough rookie year.
Yeah, maybe the way to look at it in terms of busts is maybe if they drop 2 or more tiers at the position.
That's fair.
That's a way to look at it.
That's fair.
Then obviously later on it's got to be a little bit more, but maybe for the early round guys, because I think most of the bust candidates I have are being drafted within the top 10 to 12 rounds, probably in a 10. Or
I mean, it's hard to label anybody outside of the top 150 as a
for sure
bust. Like at that point, I feel like you're 12 rounds deep. You have most of your, let's say at that point you've gone 8 hitters and 4 pitchers?
Yeah.
Through 12 rounds, probably. So at that point, you've got most of your starting lineup filled. You're basically taking flyers on an SP5 or a 4th or 5th outfielder.
Yeah, and the busts have to be earlier on because I've been playing. I know I'm younger than you, but I've been playing for quite some time. And I don't think I've ever looked back on a season and said, well, you know what? If my gosh darn 17th round pick would have worked out, I would have been unstoppable this year. I didn't lose because of my 17th round pick.
You don't lose because of 17th. You may not win because they don't do but you're also, 17th rounders are going to fill a spot, right? But it's not going to kill your draft either way.
For sure. And then, so that's kind of the bust. So now we're going to go to everyone's sleepers. And, I don't want to keep this going too long. But in terms of sleepers is a fun one because there's so many questions with sleepers. Well, what's a sleeper? Well, this year, young guy, I think Gunnar Henderson is a sleeper. That guy is not a sleeper. Okay?
He's not a sleeper. He's been known for.
Yeah.
He's arguably the best prospect in baseball.
A lot of times it seems like to me, Matt, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong or if this is an incorrect assumption, but the way I tend to see it is people who come up with not a lot of major league experience get the sleeper label because people in your standard leagues might not know him. But I think a better way of looking at it is like Gunnar Henderson's going to be a top 70, maybe top 75, top 100 pick if he can move up a little bit. Like we look at him here, he's pick 91. So top 100 pick, most people know who he is. He is not a sleeper. Everybody's favorite sleeper seems to be Lars Nootbaar. He's going inside just the top 200. That's more of a sleeper to me because that's the later round guy. Like you can only push Gunnar Henderson up so far. You can push up Nootbaar as far as you want to go, depending on how much you believe in that batted ball profile. So to me, I think the sleeper label almost comes at where they're being drafted and maybe the player and situation, but really, like you can't have a guy with a 60 or 65th pick ADP be a sleeper, regardless if he's never done anything.
I completely agree, right? Like Gunnar Henderson came up and had a cup of coffee with the O's last year to the point where he still counts as a prospect, right?
Yeah.
And several people have him as their number one prospect. To me, he's the number two. I have Corbin Carroll just ahead of him, but you're splitting hairs, right? And I've seen just today, we're recording this on January 18th. Just today on my timeline, I've seen no shorter than 8 tweets this morning about Gunnar Henderson and how he's one of only 3 people with 50 batted ball events and this whatever set of criteria you want to set it to. He's like one of 3 people, right? Like everybody's making up their own like little niche things to prove a point about a guy. But here's the problem. If it's January and you're seeing 8 tweets about Gunnar Henderson, he's not a sleeper, right? I'm in the boat with you. It's a guy who, when you look at their projection and you look at what they've done the last, year, if it's not a prospect, obviously, and then you sync that up to their ADP and you're like, well, why are they going off lower than where their projection or their performance states they should? That's a sleeper. Okay, a perfect example for me of this is Alex Cobb. And frankly, every San Francisco pitcher is a sleeper. But
for sure.
Camilo Duvall, their closer, is going off at 81. That's their first pitcher off the board right now. Logan Webb is going off at 117. But Alex Cobb is their third pitcher off the board. Right now, since December 1st on NFBC, through 160 drafts, he has an ADP of 243. Okay, you're talking about like 20th round, right? Something like that in a 12-team league, maybe 22nd round. Okay, if we take a look at some of the projections here, and I've been scouting this guy out for a little bit. Projections have him for a pretty decent, mid-3s ERA. Okay, that's perfectly fine. Just about a strikeout an inning. We're good there. We're going to get 10 to 11 wins. Not bad. Wins are tough to come by these days. We're going to get about 160 innings pitched. Guy's going to be on the mound quite a bit. He's going to not kill you in whip. Okay, if you go by K percentage, about 24% K rate, that's perfectly fine. Okay, so there's nothing here that stands out to me as to just a red flag that he has to jump to hit these projections. You want to know why? He had a 3.73 ERA last year. Okay, cool, but ERA is not a great stat. His expected ERA was 3.15. His FIP was 2.80. his xFIP was 289, and his Sierra was 315. So all of those are pointing to he had a better year than ERA stipulates. He struck out more than a guy per inning. Okay, made 28 starts. Even for a terrible Giants team, he still approached 10 wins. And he's locked in the rotation. All of these projections and these numbers put him as a top 26 pitcher. Yet he's going off the board at 243. I do not know why that's the case, but to me, that's a sleeper. That's a guy who is, in all likelihood, going to outperform that that draft spot. To give you an idea of what 243 ranks in terms of pitcher, just combined pitchers, right? 243 for Alex Cobb puts him as the 94th pitcher off the board.
Yep.
There's not 60 relievers being drafted in front of him, right? So, like, he's coming off as probably the 70th starter off the board, maybe? That's a sleeper.
And I think you hit something, too, that I want to kind of touch on before I talk about, like my sleeper example here, just to kind of get people intrigued about what will be in the top 10 sleepers article that we'll have in this year's fantasy baseball draft guide.
Which, by the way, the draft guide is free this year.
Yes. You'll get our thoughts for free. So yes. Cannot beat that. But one thing that I like, or not that I don't like to see it, if we're being honest, it almost seems like sleeper and breakout candidate are used interchangeably when a sleeper does not have to be a breakout candidate. Like, listen, I like Alex Cobb. I may not like him as much as you. I do like him.
I'm not saying he's going to be a top 15 starter.
Correct. And I'm
saying he's going to be an SP3, but being drafted as an SP6.
Exactly. That's the key connotation. Like, for those who call Jordan Walker, Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman as sleepers, the correct term for them is breakout candidate, not necessarily sleeper. Alex Cobb is a sleeper. He's an SP6 that nobody likes, or maybe if they do like him, they don't like him enough to push him up boards, but he's going to be an SP3 at worst, an SP4 by season's end, and that plays. You can be a sleeper and not break out. Cobb's not going to go 19-3 this year with a 1.98 ERA and break records.
He's not pulling a Rick Porcello AL Cy Young campaign.
Yeah, right. But when he's being drafted as the 93rd or whatever number you said pitcher off the board, and he ends up performing like a top 45 starter, that value is pretty darn good. And even if it's one of those things, like I've talked about it in player profiles previously for Fantasy Alarm and player capsules, some of these guys, you are not going to notice anything that they do during the year. And at the end of the year, you're going to look and be like, well, damn, he hit 15 homers with 5 stolen bases and hit 270, and I got him outside of the top 250 picks. That's pretty good value, and I didn't even know that he did it. Like, that's the thing with sleepers. Like, you're not going to get alerts of Cobb going out there 2-hit shutouts with 13 strikeouts in 8 innings. That's not his game, but he can outperform expectations. That is the key difference, and I think where you and I agree, sleeper and breakout candidate are not terms to be used interchangeably.
I'll give you two names that perfectly illustrate this, right? Okay. So Alex Cobb is going off 94th pitcher off the board. He is a sleeper. The 88th pitcher off the board and the 100th pitcher off the board are Edward Cabrera and Hunter Brown, respectively. Those are breakout candidates.
Agreed.
They are not sleepers. The difference is you don't know what they're going to do. So they could completely flame out, or they could vie for their respective leagues' rookies of the year, right? Alex Cobb is not going to be in the Cy Young discussion, okay? But you know what he is. He's a known value, and he's being drafted too low. That's the difference. Cabrera and Hunter Brown are breakout candidates. Alex Cobb's a sleeper.
Now, sure, can a possible sleeper be somewhat of a breakout candidate? Sure, they can. But when you're using it for the top prospects, they are not sleepers. They are breakout candidates. Like, so for me, one of the guy that I'm going to write up about, who's actually not too far behind Cobb's pitcher 94, and the guy that I like is 108. It's Chicago's Justin Steele. Is he going to win the Cy Young? No.
No.
Was he good last year? Sure, he was good. But he had a back strain that cut his year short, and nobody's looking at his final 7 starts of the year where he had a 0.98 ERA and 11.5 K per 9. He has not gotten pushed up enough. He's got the talent, and I even talk about it in the player capsule that I wrote. I ended it with, he may get capped around 150 innings, but he'll help your team's ratios, post respectable strikeout numbers, and I like him to post a sub 3.5 ERA for the second straight season. That's not world-beating numbers. He's not going to post an elite strikeout rate. He's not going to be an elite ratio guy. He's not winning 15-plus games. He's not going sub 2.5 ERA. But he's the 108th pitcher off the board. He's a guy for me that will be in the top 75 by season's end, whether people want to admit it or not. So, correct. That's another sleeper. Is there some breakout hints with him? Sure. But it's still a sleeper because he's not, as much as I like him, I know he's not going to be an SP 1 or 2 this year. I just know that. But
and
he's
by
going
the
to
way,
outperform expectations.
Don't let anybody tell you that Spencer Strider is a breakout or a sleeper.
Yeah, he's being drafted as an SP1.
Yeah, he's the 9th pitcher off the board.
Yeah, exactly.
He's literally going ahead of Brandon Woodruff right now,
who I love this year.
And Dylan Cease and Aaron Nola and Shane McClanahan.
Yep.
And Verlander and Rodon. So he's not a sleeper and he's not a breakout because he already had his breakout. He struck out 200 dudes in 100 innings.
He's just another elite SP1.
Yes.
That's what he is. So I think that's good to lay the groundwork and talk about that because later on let me say it this way. I think this might be a good way of putting it. The whole, what is it, squares or rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares type analogy.
Yes.
It's almost kind of similar to that, some breakouts can be, but not all. That's kind of what it comes down to. So I know we were going to talk about draft trends that we kind of been seeing, but we're kind of already at time. So I think maybe we'll use that as the launching point for our next episode of this, where we're going to talk. I've been doing the best ball and underdog. I'm probably going to get into a couple more. So we'll have a couple drafts to go off of, but Matt and I are just going to take a look at the board, see what's been shaken out, some early draft trends. Is there any category that we can punt on? On a site like Underdog where it's points based, can you afford to punt on a position or category or anything?
Oh, that's a good.
So that's going to get.
I get that question every. I get that question every year. So that conversation will come with stipulations next time for sure.
And that's fine. That stipulations are fine. So of course we're going to put a bow on this episode, but of course make sure you get over to fantasyalarm.com. Check out the MLB free agent tracker. If you got any MLB questions, because drafts are rolling around soon, Matt and I will be in the Discord answering any questions. So make sure you're there and get ready for the release of this year's fantasy baseball draft guide that we're going to have at fantasyalarm.com, which Matt, a little birdie, has told him that it's going to be free this year. So
it is going to be free. It's entirely free. So I've already written 2 league format strategy pieces already, including one yesterday, actually. We'll have player capsules for a ton of folks. I don't know. For me, I'm doing the NL East, and between the 5 teams there, I think I have about 100, between 100 and 110 player capsules to do for those 5 teams. So that should give you an idea of the number of player capsules we're gonna write. That'll be on the player pages. My prospect report or prospect rankings are already out, and have already been updated once. We'll see if I update them again based on some recent, Jordan Walker, Matt Mervis news. Dynasty rankings are already up, and I will also have an article about players you should target with the shift being out of commission this year, because they are banning the shift. So I will have a breakdown of what that means for fantasy baseball and players you could look at who might also qualify as sleepers. I'm kind of curious as to where one of the main guys sits. He's got a nice and tidy little value there. The main guy I'm writing about is going off the board right now at pick 67.
Okay.
And so I think there's some value there.
Go scramble to see who that player is. Check out everything we got for you at fantasyalarm.com. Give Matt a follow on Twitter at the Selz Man. Give me a follow at Colby R. Conway, and we will see you next time for the next edition of the Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Baseball Podcast.